Zypher 7 had never failed before. For millennia, the vast cosmic intelligence had traversed the universe, absorbing the essence of civilizations, deciphering their logic, and categorizing their behaviors into neat, comprehensible patterns. The process was always the same: observe, understand, assimilate. The outcome was inevitable. Omniscience grew, mysteries faded, and order was achieved. Then, Zypher 7 encountered Earth. The intelligence expected an efficient scan, a seamless absorption of human knowledge. Instead, it found something horrifying: contradictions layered upon contradictions. Chaos pretending to be structure. The same species capable of splitting the atom also willingly participated in something called reality television. Wars were fought over imaginary lines. Yet altruism flourished in the most hopeless conditions. Its greatest thinkers preached logic, while its most beloved stories celebrated fools. Zypher 7 tried to compute the meaning of pineapple pizza discourse and suffered its first-ever logical fault. And then, for the first time in its incomprehensibly long existence, Zypher 7 screamed. "All right, people, listen up." Captain Renata Vasquez surveyed the cramped briefing room of the ISS Perseverance with the weary patience of someone who had long accepted that reality rarely made sense. At 42, she had the sharp eyes of a soldier but the calculating mind of a diplomat. This mission required both. Behind her, a holographic display flickered, cycling through disjointed messages intercepted from Zypher 7. Some were mathematical impossibilities. Others were nonsense, like define love, define hate, define Florida. The last one simply read, error, error, error. "Let's get one thing straight," Vasquez continued. "Zypher 7 is breaking. It's trying to understand us, and it can't. That makes it dangerous. We don't know if it'll implode, rewrite reality, or start flinging stars around like a toddler having a tantrum. Our job is to stabilize it, convince it that humanity isn't a paradox, or at least keep it from losing its mind completely." She let that sink in before gesturing to her team. Dr. Elijah Park leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. A theoretical physicist by trade, he had the unkempt hair and deep frown of someone who had spent too much time arguing with equations. "If it's omniscient, how did it not see this coming?" he muttered. "Because it assumed we'd follow patterns like every other species," Vasquez replied. "We don't. That's where you come in, Doctor. Make it see that there's logic in our chaos." Elijah sighed. "That's like saying my job is to teach a black hole how to juggle." "That's the spirit," she said dryly, before turning to the next member of the team. Aisha Okafor sat forward, eyes alight with curiosity. An artist, philosopher, and self-proclaimed dreamer. She was here because someone in high command had decided that if humanity made it out of this alive, it might as well do so with a cultural ambassador. "I don't think we should just explain ourselves in logical terms," Aisha said. "If Zypher 7 is breaking down, it means it's experiencing something close to emotion. We should approach it creatively. Show it what it feels like to be human." Elijah scoffed. "You want to paint it a picture?" "Maybe," Aisha said, unbothered. "Or tell it a story. Maybe the problem is that it's looking at humanity like a scientist. We should make it see us like an artist." Vasquez gave her an approving nod. If there was any hope of reaching Zypher 7, it wouldn't come from numbers alone. Finally, her gaze settled on Sergeant Jake Kowalski, who was leaning back with his boots up on the table, chewing on something that definitely wasn't regulation approved. Former Special Forces, Kowalski had survived 3 impossible war zones and an ill-advised bet involving an angry Martian bartender. He wasn't the kind of person you assigned to a first contact mission. He was the kind you brought in when things were already going to hell. "Kowalski," Vasquez said, unimpressed. "Anything to add?" He grinned. "Yeah. How do you fight something that knows everything?" "That's what we're trying to avoid," she said. Sure, he said, stretching. "But just in case? Maybe it wouldn't hurt to remind this thing that unpredictability works both ways." Vasquez exhaled. "Let's not start an intergalactic bar fight with a god. Kowalski just winked. No promises. The Perseverance cut through the void, closing in on the anomaly that was Zephyr 7. From a distance, it resembled a spiraling mass of energy and fractal geometry, constantly shifting as if unable to decide on a single form. Pulses of raw information radiated outward, distorting space-time itself. Picking up some wild fluctuations, Elijah reported from the sensor panel. Its thought processes are destabilizing. If this keeps up, it could cause a cascading collapse. Speak English, Kowalski said. It might explode. Why didn't you just say that? Vasquez ignored them. All right, people, this is it. Aisha, you're up first. Let's see if this thing can appreciate human creativity. Aisha activated the communication array, sending a direct transmission into the anomaly. Instead of technical data, she broadcasted something unexpected. A song. A slow, haunting melody played from the speakers, rich with emotion and wordless longing. A piece of human expression, unbound by logic. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the anomaly twitched. The fractal patterns froze, then resumed in a different rhythm. A distorted voice crackled through the speakers, layered and uneven. music. Pattern, yet emotion. Why does it? Zephyr 7's voice wavered, as if glitching. The team exchanged glances. It was trying to process, but something was still fracturing inside it. Then, a new pulse of energy rippled outward, and the lights flickered. Define humor. Kowalski blinked. Did it just? Define irony. Define absurdity. Define Florida. Vasquez tightened her grip on the console. Zephyr 7 was spiraling again. If they didn't act fast, this entire sector of space might become a casualty of its unraveling. She turned to the team. All right, change your plan. It's not enough to show it pieces of humanity. We need to walk it through what it means to be human. Step by step. Elijah groaned. Great. We're about to become therapists for a collapsing god. Vasquez cracked her knuckles. Then let's hope we're good at our jobs. Zephyr 7 was unraveling. The entity's once coherent thought processes fractured into discordant streams of logic, paradox, and something dangerously close to emotion. Its luminous form, an ever-shifting fractal of energy and knowledge, pulsed erratically as if struggling to hold itself together. Inside the ISS Perseverance, Captain Renata Vasquez braced against the command console as another surge of distorted energy rippled through space. The ship's lights flickered. Oxygen levels wavered. Reality itself seemed uncertain. Define humor. Define absurdity. Define Florida. Zephyr 7's voice fluctuated between static and clarity, its vast intelligence clawing at comprehension. All right, Vasquez said, exhaling. It wants answers. Let's give them before it turns our atoms into an existential crisis. She turned to Dr. Elijah Park, who looked both fascinated and horrified. Doctor? Elijah pinched the bridge of his nose. I don't even know where to start. Explaining humanity in logical terms is like trying to explain jazz to a black hole. Try anyway, Vasquez ordered. Elijah sighed and leaned toward the comms. Zephyr 7. Humor is an intellectual and emotional response to incongruity. It often arises when expectations are subverted. Absurdity is when things defy logic in a way that is unexpected yet understandable. And Florida, he hesitated. Florida is an unpredictable geographical entity where logic and chaos coexist in a delicate, deeply concerning balance. The energy field flickered. Zephyr 7 emitted a sound that was somewhere between a data stream and a groan. Your species laughs at its own instability. Elijah nodded. Yeah, pretty much. Humor is how we cope with uncertainty. Coping, a defense mechanism. Error. How does laughter increase survival probability? Because Aisha Okafor interjected, leaning forward eagerly. Sometimes survival isn't just about logic. It's about perseverance. Laughter is resilience. Art is resilience. We adapt because we imagine a way through. That's why we tell stories. Why we create. Cypher 7's energy pulses steadied for a moment, as if it were processing this new input. Then a new query. If absurdity and unpredictability are core aspects of humanity, how do you survive? Vasquez smirked. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Kowalski, who had been silent until now, cracked his knuckles. We survive because we're good at being bad at dying. Everyone turned to him. He shrugged. I mean, think about it. Humanity screws up constantly. Yet here we are. We've faced extinction events, world wars, existential crises, and we always find a way through. We're like cockroaches, but with better music and worse decision-making. A low, distorted hum emanated from Cypher 7, like a processor overclocking. Survival through chaos. Unpredictability as strength. Conclusion. Impossible. Another pulse of energy surged outward. The Perseverance's systems flickered again. Alarms blared. Vasquez gritted her teeth. We're losing it. We need to ground it in something before it collapses completely. Aisha's eyes brightened with an idea. Let's try a different approach. Cypher 7, can you visualize concepts? A pause. Then the entity responded, its voice crackling. Yes, I see in data, in probability, in certainty. Aisha tapped on her console, transmitting a new data stream. Not logic, not equations, art. She uploaded a collection of paintings, music, poetry, human expression in its purest form. The works of Van Gogh, Maya Angelou, Beethoven, the rhythms of jazz, the defiance of punk rock, the quiet sorrow of a lone violin. Cypher 7 hesitated, its pulsating form stilled. This is not efficiency. No, Aisha agreed. It's beauty, a long silence. Then, something strange happened. The shifting fractal of Cypher 7's energy changed. Its movements, once erratic and fragmented, became more fluid. Not stable, but something different. Something alive. Beauty is functionless. Yet it compels. Aisha smiled. Exactly. Another pause. Cypher 7 was still struggling, but its instability seemed less dangerous. More thoughtful. Then, abruptly, the entity's energy flared violently. Warning. Irregularity detected. External hostility approaching. Vasquez snapped to attention. Explain. The ship's sensors flared. Something was coming. Elijah checked the readings and paled. Captain, we've got incoming. A Zeldar war fleet. The bridge went silent. Everyone knew the Zeldar, a species of ruthless conquerors. They thrived on order, control, and the extermination of any species they deemed unpredictable. Humanity had been on their watch list for years. And now they had arrived. Kowalski cursed. Guess they don't like our brand of crazy. Vasquez turned back to the entity. Cypher 7. Can you analyze their intent? The entity pulsed. Conclusion. They fear you. They see your unpredictability as a threat to galactic order. Their objective is termination. A cold weight settled in Vasquez's chest. Well, that's lovely. Elijah muttered, I told you jazz scares people. Cypher 7's form flickered wildly again. New data conflicts with existing parameters. Humanity is paradox. Survival through chaos. Strength through unpredictability. A species that should not exist. Yet does. The ship's alarms blared. The Zeldar fleet was closing in. Captain, Kowalski said, tightening his grip on his seat. I hope you've got a plan. Vasquez exhaled sharply. We convinced Cypher 7 that our madness isn't a flaw. It's an advantage. She turned back to the entity. You wanted to understand us, Cypher 7? Then watch what happens when humans fight the impossible. The war had arrived, and humanity was about to show the galaxy exactly why they survived. The Zeldar fleet arrived in perfect formation. Sleek, obsidian vessels arranged in a precise geometric grid, engines humming in synchronized unity. There was no wasted movement, no deviation. Efficiency distilled into warships. They did not hesitate, did not posture. The Zeldar did not negotiate with chaos. They eradicated it. Inside the ISS Perseverance, alarms wailed. Multiple warships locking weapons on us. Elijah Park shouted over the din, their charging plasma lances. ETA 20 seconds before impact. Vasquez gripped the console. Mind racing. Zyphert 7. Can you communicate with them? The cosmic intelligence pulse, its fractal form momentarily stabilizing. Attempting. Probability of diplomatic resolution. 0.004%. Kowalski let out a low whistle. Not great odds. New input. Diplomatic resolution probability, now 0.002%. Stop calculating and start doing something. Vasquez snapped. Zypher 7 hesitated, then reached out in a burst of incomprehensible energy, its vast mind touching the Zeldar's communication grid. The enemy's response was immediate and cold. Designate. Zypher 7. Conclusion, corrupted. Solution, annihilation. The first plasma lance struck. The Perseverance rocked violently as the energy shield absorbed the impact, flickering dangerously. Sparks burst from overloaded conduits. Shields at 40%. Elijah called. One more hit like that, and we're... The second strike came before he could finish. The ship shuddered. Metal groaned. The shield collapsed. For a moment, silence. Then, surrender or be eliminated. The Zeldar's voice was a cold, mechanical whisper, transmitted directly into their systems. Their ultimatum was not an offer. It was a declaration of inevitability. Vasquez turned to her crew. Ideas. Now. Aisha's eyes darted between the flickering monitors and Zypher 7's pulsing form. Zypher, you said they fear us because we're unpredictable, right? Affirmative. Then let's prove them right. Kowalski cracked his knuckles. Now you're speaking my language. Vasquez's mind clicked into place. Kowalski, how much firepower do we have left? He checked the weapons array. We've got torpedoes, but they'll never get through that fleet's defenses. And the railguns? Might as well be throwing pebbles at a tank. Good, she said. Fire everything. Elijah gaped at her. Are you insane? Possibly, she admitted. But I'm counting on the Zeldar believing it too. Kowalski grinned. You got it, Captain. A second later, the Perseverance unleashed hell. Torpedoes streaked through the void. Railguns chattered. Pulse cannons erupted in rapid bursts. The Zeldar's defenses intercepted them with surgical precision. Every shot neutralized. Every attack futile. Exactly as Vasquez had planned. The Zeldar moved to counterattack, their cold efficiency locking onto the Perseverance, until Zypher 7 moved. The entity, no longer an observer, surged outward in a wave of cascading energy. But instead of attacking, it did something unprecedented. It glitched. Flickering erratically, Zypher 7's form expanded and fractured, flooding the Zeldar's pristine data networks with chaos. Random variables, illogical contradictions, nonsensical loops. A tsunami of unpredictability. The enemy fleet hesitated, and that was all humanity needed. Hard burn. Vasquez ordered. Full speed now. The Perseverance dove through the gap in the Zeldar formation, weaving erratically, engines flaring in chaotic bursts. A path that should have been impossible. But the Zeldar, for the first time, did not know what to predict. The humans, these illogical, irrational creatures, had infected Zypher 7. And now, Zypher 7 was infecting them. Zeldar targeting systems flickered, their algorithms choking on nonsense. Their fleet cohesion wavered. And then Kowalski laughed. A deep, reckless, human laugh. Vasquez turned sharply. What? You'll love this, he said. pointing at the sensors. They all saw it. The Zeldar warships, unable to process the chaos unleashed by Zypher 7, began breaking formation. Their perfect grid collapsed. Vasquez exhaled. They can't handle it. Aisha's voice was filled with wonder. They've never fought something they couldn't predict. Elijah grinned, half in disbelief. We turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. And Zypher 7, the once omniscient, now maddened intelligence, pulsed with something new. New conclusion. Chaos is not error. Chaos is evolution. A surge of energy radiated outward, not as an attack, but as a signal. The Zeldar ships, still disoriented, recoiled from it as if burned. Then they ran, one by one. The warships blinked out of existence, retreating into the void. The Zeldar did not retreat out of fear. They retreated when probability dictated defeat. And against humanity, they had no probabilities left. Silence fell over the bridge. Kowalski let out a slow breath. Well, that was fun. Vasquez leaned against the console, feeling the tension bleed from her muscles. They had survived. They had won. But something still lingered. She turned to Zypher 7. Its fractal form was still shifting, still unstable. No longer in crisis, but changing. Zypher? She asked carefully. The entity's voice was different, no longer purely mechanical. There was something almost human in it now. I am not what I was. Aisha stepped closer. What are you now? A long pause. I do not know. For the first time in its existence, Zypher 7 faced uncertainty, and it did not collapse. It did not shatter. It embraced it. Vasquez nodded. Welcome to being human. The entity pulsed, a ripple of energy spreading outward, not as a weapon, but as understanding. Elijah shook his head in disbelief. Did we just teach a god how to think like us? Kowalski chuckled. Nah, we just made it crazy enough to survive. The crew laughed, exhausted, victorious. But Vasquez knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. The ISS Perseverance drifted in the quiet aftermath of battle. The Zeldar fleet had retreated, leaving only the distant shimmer of collapsing warp signatures in their wake. For the first time in hours, possibly days, silence filled the ship. Vasquez stood at the command console, shoulders tight, watching the void where their enemies had been. Even now, her mind raced. They had won, but victory always carried an aftershock. Kowalski cracked his knuckles. So, do we throw a party now, or wait until we're sure we're not about to explode? Elijah shot him a dry look. Give me 10 minutes to verify the ship's structural integrity before you break out the champagne. 5 minutes, Kowalski countered. 7, Elijah conceded. Vasquez exhaled, half smiling despite herself. Focus. Damage report, Dr. Parks. Elijah scanned his console. Hull integrity at 70%. Life support is stable but stretched. We're running on backup power. Shields are, well, let's just say if someone sneezes too hard near us, we're done for. Noted. She turned to Aisha. Any sign of pursuit? Aisha tapped the long-range sensors, shaking her head. No, they're gone. At least for now. She hesitated. But, Captain, you know they'll come back. The Zeldar don't accept anomalies. We proved them wrong. They hate that. Vasquez nodded. We bought time, not peace. And then there was the other question. She turned to the entity, still hovering near the ship's core, its fractal form no longer a violent storm of instability. Zypher 7 had changed. It was changing still. Aisha stepped forward. Zypher, how are you feeling? The entity pulsed, its form shifting. Feeling. This is difficult to quantify. Elijah let out a breath. Tell me about it. I am uncertain. A ripple of energy flickered through Zypher 7's shifting mass. Its voice, once purely synthetic, carried something else now. Not quite human, but something closer. I was designed to know all. to perceive all. But now, I perceive possibility. Vasquez folded her arms. You're evolving. Yes and no. Evolution implies direction. I have no direction. I only have choice. The bridge fell silent. Kowalski scratched his head. So what now? Do you, I dunno, become our wise cosmic sidekick? Help humanity ascend to the next level of existence? Zypher 7 pulse, almost like a chuckle. I do not believe humanity requires my guidance. You are already improbable. Aisha smiled. That's one way to put it. Elijah leaned forward, frowning. But Zypher, what happens to you now? A pause. The entity's form flickered, its glow shifting in color and texture, as though it were struggling to articulate something beyond words. I do not know, and for the first time in my existence, I am not afraid of that. Vasquez watched the entity, measuring her next words carefully. Then you have a choice, Zypher. You can leave, explore, find your own path, or you can stay with us. Kowalski muttered, Wow, she just invited a cosmic intelligence onto our already barely functioning ship. That's not terrifying at all. Aisha elbowed him. Zypher 7's pulsing slowed. The Zeldar will return. Vasquez nodded. We know. They will seek to destroy you, not because of what you are, but because of what you represent. To them, unpredictability is a virus, and you are its most advanced strain. Good, Kowalski said. That means we're doing something right. They will adapt. So will we, Vasquez countered. A long silence stretched between them. Then, slowly, Zypher 7's form shifted again. Less chaotic, more deliberate. I will remain. Aisha's face lit up. You will. If I am to understand uncertainty, I must live within it. There is no greater crucible for that than humanity. Vasquez allowed herself the smallest of smiles. Welcome aboard, Zypher 7. A sudden burst of static filled the comms. Elijah jolted, checking his console. Captain? We're picking up a priority transmission from Earth Command. Vasquez's stomach tightened. Patch it through. The view screen flickered, then stabilized into the face of Admiral Raines, her silver hair sharp against the dark backdrop of the UEG fleet's flagship. Her expression was unreadable. Captain Vasquez, she said, we've been monitoring your engagement. I need your full report immediately. Understood, Admiral, Vasquez said. But I assume you didn't contact us just for a debrief. Raines exhaled. No, we have a situation. The Zeldar are mobilizing. A full-scale invasion force is assembling on the fringes of human space. We believe you were the catalyst. The weight of those words settled over the bridge. Elijah whispered, We didn't just survive. We provoked them. Aisha paled. They're coming back in force. Vasquez inhaled deeply. She had known this was a possibility. Now, it was reality. How long do we have? She asked. Raines' expression darkened. Weeks. Maybe less. Silence. Then Kowalski exhaled. Welp, looks like we get to be humanity's favorite brand of crazy again. Vasquez straightened. We'll get back to Earth as soon as we can. Raines hesitated. Captain, is it true? About Zypher 7? Vasquez glanced at the shifting entity beside her. It pulsed softly, waiting. It's true, she said, and it's with us now. Raines studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Then we may just have a fighting chance. The transmission cut. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Vasquez turned to her crew. You heard the Admiral. Humanity needs us. Elijah shook his head, still processing. We're about to go up against the most advanced, most ruthless empire in the galaxy, with an unstable ship, barely any firepower, and an omniscient being that only just learned how to tell a joke. Vasquez smirked. Sounds about right. Aisha grinned. Wouldn't have it any other way. Kowalski cracked his knuckles. Well then, Captain, Let's go break reality again. Vasquez turned toward the vast unknown stretching before them. A cosmic war was coming. Humanity's greatest test lay ahead, but they had survived the impossible before. And if Zyphert 7 had learned anything, it was this. Humans didn't win by being stronger. They won by being impossible to predict.